As I've already said before, Season 3 is where Buffy the Vampire Slayer went from a series with cases of excellence amidst some inconsistent quality to a mostly excellent one. Along with the wealth of character growth for all the series regulars, there were permanent changes to the status quo and grand payoffs in this last part of the high school era of Buffy. The series also continues to explore a variety of themes such as loneliness, guilt, and dig further into this most prominent idea of how human nature can result in greater evils than what the physical demons of the series can. But the focus of this video is more on how it explores a certain trope very well and, as the series goes on, does so to a degree more thorough than most other works of fiction tend to. The most notable addition of the season cast is the new Slayer Faith. She immediately establishes herself as having far more character than her predecessor Kendra, whose characterization was mainly being very serious and lacking humour, with her only standing out when playing the straight woman to other characters. It's as the season progresses that Faith acts as what one could call the Dark Reflection, though I'm not sure if there's a more popular name for this trope. To summarise, it's the idea of having the antagonist display traits and or a journey that highlights what the protagonist could become either through a different decision or continue on their path as a means of personifying what the character's flaws may be. One can see this fairly early on with how Faith's role as Buffy's Dark Reflection is built into both her personality and appearance. A brunette wearing dark, flashy and seductive clothes compared to the blonde wearing mainly light and modest ones by comparison. Buffy is faithful to Angel, whereas Faith avoids commitment with her relationships consisting of flings to relieve stress. Faith is a loner from her experiences, whereas Buffy retains an imperfect yet strong bond with her friends and family. We see the usage of this narrative device as Faith influences Buffy to copy some of her wild habits in enjoying slaying vampires and breaking law, as well as, later on, put Buffy's ethics on not taking her human life to the test. These are very much the standard fare of a Dark Reflection's bad influence. But this goes a bit further than most with such types of antagonistic foils, with Buffy influencing Faith. The most notable instance of this is in the episode Amends, where, in fashion for the time of year, Faith is responsive enough to Buffy's, though more so her mother's, charity in being invited to spend Christmas with them. This will be far from the last time Faith is influenced by Buffy, but that's jumping too far ahead for now. Before all that, during Faith's introduction, we see a weakness unexpected of her confident and nonchalant attitude, with her having come to Sunnydale to escape the vampire Kakistos after the death of her watcher. Showcasing such fear to overcome and a feeling of helplessness stands in opposition to Buffy presenting great confidence in her early days as a Slayer, even when at a disadvantage. This comes to be due to her trust in her friend's capabilities, unlike Faith having to rely on her own abilities, a reason for the jealousy Faith comes to have for Buffy. The turning point of their duality happens in the episode Bad Girls, and is immediately followed with its consequences in the episode Consequences. After having influenced Buffy in her belief that Slayers should be above the laws of man, and gotten into trouble with the police, Faith accidentally stakes Deputy Mayor Finch before quickly putting this crucial moment behind her, leaving her responsibilities as a Slayer and working for Mayor Wilkins' demonic aspirations, with Buffy forced to face Faith in several parts of the Mayor's unfolding plan before their climactic fight in the two-part finale. It's here that the more unconventional route for the Dark Reflection is taken, with the mercilessness Faith told Buffy to have, as well as desperation to secure the lives of herself and Angel, causing Buffy to stab Faith, ultimately having Faith win in the battle of sticking to principles. This is made apparent visually too, with Buffy's outfit during the fight being what Faith wore early in the season. This goes doubly so when Buffy's reason for being willing to go beyond her ethics is to use Faith's blood to save Angel, being hypocritical of her role as a Slayer by willingly wishing to make someone food for a vampire, regardless of the context and circumstances. The parallels also show with Faith's allegiance to the Mayor and his paternal actions. Despite both Buffy and Faith being very capable women with great mental fortitude, both honestly have some level of daddy issues. We see this with the nightmare manifested for Buffy in Season 1 being the idea of her father not caring for her, and we can see a subtle side effect common with such strained paternal relations in two of her most prominent lovers being far, far older than her. Faith's lack of familial bonds at the time of her introduction and clearly broken upbringing with what's made even more apparent in the comics also shows her lack of a necessary male influence in her life. So attempting to find a home and family within the ranks of Mayor Wilkins is both fitting for her character and in line with paralleling Buffy. What elevates Faith's role as a dark reflection to Buffy even more happens during the events in the following seasons, as well as in those of the spin-off Angel. Even with some of the better dark reflections of a character, they may contain the narrative flaw of losing their ability to represent a path of the protagonist once the latter realizes this and affirms their ability to not follow such a path. Most writers would see this as their narrative potential fulfilled and simply have the protagonist defeat them thoroughly, or have their life end through some other cause to get them out of the story. This isn't always the path such a device may take, with there being cases of the protagonist being unable to succeed where their dark self failed, or some other result coming about. But these cases are in the minority, and the reason why the fight in Season 3 is excellent, and why Faith's arc from here on stands out even more so. Faith's return in Season 4 has her switching bodies with Buffy and attempting to steal the life she's built from her. It's here that Faith's jealousy for Buffy and the need for belonging are on full display, as well as her chaotic actions foreshadowing some aspects of later seasons. Her flirts with Spike point towards the attraction the real Buffy and Spike will build for each other, and her causing Riley to be technically unfaithful to Buffy, that would be expected to have the consequence of Buffy seeing Riley as not being considerate of her true self, is instead reversed with Riley gradually believing Buffy to not value him before leaving. It's after an arc of self-loathing, psychotic violence, and rehabilitation in prison on Angel that she returns to make amends and act as a Slayer should. It's in Season 4 of Angel that she's shown to have another significant parallel to Buffy, with the consequences of their actions on their Watcher. Whereas Buffy's actions in saving the world and pointing out the flaws of the Watcher's counsel caused Giles to believe her to have outgrown him and have immense respect for her, Faith's torture of Wesley before her prison time understandably caused Wesley to hold no care for her assumed changes and resent her entirely despite being able to work with her for the greater good. It's when returning to Sunnydale in Season 7 of Buffy that the intersection of Faith and Buffy's arcs becomes apparent. Whereas Faith has started to become more of a team player and fight for altruistic goals in a manner similar to what one would expect of Buffy, Buffy herself has displayed more firm authority over the group, and had previously dabbled in more reckless behaviours in Season 6 in a manner more like Faith. It's this overlap between the two characters' parallel arcs that allow Faith's role as a mirror to Buffy to stand out. One of the few similar arcs between the protagonist and their darker mirror come to mind being that of Son Goku and Vegeta in Dragon Ball, with the proud Saiyan Prince Vegeta embracing more earthling traits as the Z portion of the series continues, and especially so in GT, whereas the one raised as an earthling, Goku, starts to embrace more Saiyan traits and pride with each arc. A difference with Faith and Buffy's arcs, though, is that it's far less of a yin and yang come to complete someone with Faith, as her temporary stint in replacing Buffy as leader goes awry quickly and would have been a true disaster without Buffy's aid. This is fitting, though, with a Faith that once believed herself to be above the standards of others, coming to accept Buffy as the more experienced leader, as well as Buffy's return to leading the group being more of a case of necessity rather than her own pride, plus Faith being made leader was something she didn't aim for. We also see the crossover of their arcs and the relationships they form. Despite Buffy's desires for a stable relationship and seem to have a very serious commitment to Angel when Faith was introduced, she is unable to keep one with any of her partners by the series finale, whereas Faith is able to find some level of stability with Robin Wood, even if it eventually ended during the comic continuation of the series. Overall, the duality established in this season, both on its own and as it later progressed, results in one of the most thoroughly explored examples of a dark reflection of the protagonist, with how Faith deals powerful moral blows to Buffy's integrity, and how both sides of the coin start to become more similar to the other as time goes on. This is the standard anyone wishing for similar goals with an opposing threat to a protagonist should look towards, choice if wanting to make both as well explored and necessary as mirrors to each other as can be. Next time, we'll take things in a far more comedic route for season 4, or, more accurately, the writers will with a villainous character.